Hello and welcome to TheGunBlog.ca. My guest today is Tim Cairns, the president of Springfield Sports Club in New Brunswick, and his club just won a significant court victory that affects that is relevant to every shooting range in Canada, and by extension, relevant to every member of every shooting range in Canada. Congratulations to you, Tim, on your victory, and thank you for coming here to talk about the court win and how you got here.
I want to thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to this opportunity to assist other clubs.
I'm looking so forward to it. Now, before we get into the details, I want to open with what I view as the huge number one takeaway from your court victory, and that is that shooting ranges can fight CFO abuses of authority and win. And that's really the big lesson. And CFO is the chief firearms office. Every province and every territory has a chief firearms officer. We can win. I've heard so many stories from clubs across the country where the CFO invents arbitrary rules and regulations and conditions. Most of them just shut up and put up. Your club didn't. What led you to go to court?
As a club, we've been operating for a number of years, and the CFO has always had a number of conditions, about 6 conditions attached to range approval. One of them was what hours you could operate. And we had always sent in our documentation for 24 hours a day, but we never got into night shooting. Okay. So we didn't worry about that. Other conditions they had on were usually strictly reproductions from what was in the rules and regulations. Okay. So it wasn't a big deal. In 2019, they decided to increase that 6 to 26 individual conditions. They left the original 6 and added all kinds of other ones that infringed on the operator's responsibility within the ranges. So we'd had enough, and we said it was time to fight back. We had the resources to do it. We have 2 very prominent lawyers within our club who were immense helps to us. So we said, nope, that's it. We're going to go after Section 74 reference hearing and challenge this once and for all for our club and for all the other clubs that we could.
And
that's where we stood. Yep.
And I want to applaud you. That's why you're here, because this is a rare, and as far as I know, it's a unique event, and that's why we're going to spend some time focusing on the before, during, and after. I want to just start by getting into. I've got some slides here. Just the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 2018 was the initial inspection of Springfield Range. There were,
and then in January.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then in January 2019, CFO approves the range with 26 conditions.
That's correct. They added 26 conditions. Now, just to back up on the August inspection, they failed some of our ranges due to things that were not part of the inspection process. Things like bullet impact areas. All our angles are in excess of requirements. Excess of the requirements involved in range design. But they failed it. When I asked them what's going on, they said, well, it's going to degrade over time. It's kind of like getting your vehicle inspection done today. They're going to fail you because your brakes are going to fail a year from now. Okay. It just doesn't work. So we talked about these things, and they backed off on them because they said, no, we don't agree with this. And we were forceful about it. 2019, we got the new approval with 26 conditions, okay, which was not a good move. Again, we met with the CFO at the time, and he said, nope, that's the way it is. Asked him why these were there. He says, because a lot of clubs are asking the same kind of questions. Not my problem. The clubs are responsible to understand the regulations. They stayed. So we launched a 74 reference hearing. What got us in the door was they had put the hours of operation at something different than what we'd applied for in our application. And they have no authority to change the application. So in our eyes, it was a sham application and therefore a refusal. That's why we use Section 74.
And that's Section 74 of the Firearms Act, and
the Firearms Act, and that is used for refusals to issue a license, refusals to issue a range approval, this kind of thing. So their argument was they approved the range, therefore we couldn't get in with a 74, and we said no. And the provincial court judge agreed with us that they changed the conditions on our application. Therefore, we took that as a refusal. And I believe there was a case similar like that out west with Runkle. They changed the conditions on a ATT, and they fought under a 74 and won that also.
And you mentioned Runkle. I'm going to acknowledge it right now. Ian Runkle is a lawyer in Alberta who has a popular YouTube channel. It's thanks to him that I found out about your case, and I saw also he was one of the main donors to the GoFundMe. We'll get into that a little.
Yeah,
Acknowledge
we'll
Ian
get it.
Runkle for spreading the
Anyways,
word about this.
yeah,
But
very, yeah.
just to on the timeline, I just want to get the like it's been a long battle. There has
Mm-hmm.
been different courts. There was provincial court, then there was Court of Queen's Bench, which is a higher court. Then there was the Court of Appeal, which is yet another court. So you've been in different courts with different judges, a whole bunch of hearings over 4 years. In the middle of that, you had the COVID, the two and a half,
Mm-hmm.
2 years of COVID shutdowns and slowdowns. Like it has not been an easy process to get here.
No, no, it's not. And that's why you'll see when we filed in January 2019 for the reference, hearings didn't start until late in 2020 because of COVID.
Let's just go
Okay.
back to that. Yeah. So you file in November
Exactly.
2019. The hearings, right?
Start.
The hearings were in right. The hearings were in 2020 into 20. Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
correct. 2019, I think, was one hearing. Then it was back into February or March the next
so yeah.
year,
Obviously,
2020.
there's a lot more steps that aren't on this slide. This
Oh,
is just
oh
kind
yeah.
of
I
but
mean, bouncing around. I mean, we spent 3 full days in court for the original reference hearing.
And I just also want to just so people know what we're talking about. Springfield Sports Club is you've got you've got 9 shooting ranges going from 25 meters to 1,000 meters. You began operations in 2002, so you have a 20-year history. Have you had any accidents or injuries reported or issues that might have led the CFO to say we got to do something about these guys?
Nothing at all. There was a claim by a member a number of years ago, but it was a member where we had canceled his membership because of the way he was operating on the range. And that has never been settled.
Okay.
And that's been in existence for 4 or 5 years. And I went through hearings for that. And their lawyers had started to have questions about what he had been telling them. So, same as we had queries about it. So, as far as I know, that's never been settled. It's going to just die
Okay.
with the lawyers. Okay?
Okay.
But no, we've had that was the only reported issue we ever had. And we didn't agree with what he said had happened. So our lawyer fought that at that point in time, and like I say, it's stalemated.
Got it. Okay.
No,
And
we've had no issues. I mean, we've had the occasional range where they say, "Oh, you've got a rock the size of your fist sitting on the range, therefore you got to remove it before we'll approve the range."
okay.
Okay?
And also, just to
Standards.
situate where you are about half. I looked at the Google Maps. I'm based in Ontario, so
Yep,
I'm not familiar with your range, but Google Maps says you're about half-hour drive west of Fredericton in New Brunswick, and
correct. In the
just
middle of
in
nowhere.
middle of nowhere. Yeah, beautiful range on Department of Natural Resource property, 30 hectares. It's just a
Yeah,
spectacular.
if you square it off, it's about 30. We have a lease for about 19. Okay, because of the length of the 1,000 meter.
And I'm just going to pop up. There's a photo of the range that's from your website, from the Fredericton Recreational Shooting Association website. I'll give credit where credit is due there.
Two
And
ranges you see in the center are both 50-meter ranges.
those are 250-meter ranges. Okay.
Those are 250-meter ranges. The one with all the activity on it is our Cowboy Action Range. That's why you'll see partway down the range there's black walls. Those are mats to pick up missed shots. They're filled
Got it.
with.
Okay.
And on just up about 2 o'clock from that one, there's a covered firing point that's on another 50-meter range. Keep going. There's a covered firing point on a 25-meter range. And there's another range on the other side of that, which is another 25-meter, which is our action shooting range. For your information, that range now has berms on all 4 sides to make sure everything is contained within the range. Because with the 180-degree rule, you can only shoot so far. So we've spent a lot of money increasing the capabilities on that facility. Right at the bottom left-hand corner of the picture is a 100-meter range. That's got a full shoot building on it, which is 24 by 36 with 6 shooting ports in it. You can do standing and bench. Beside that, there's another range, 100 meters, with another building, which we've got standing, bench, and prone within it. Both buildings have heaters.
Incredible.
We plow all the way to about the range with the 50-meter with the covered firing point. You plow that all winter long so people can get in. Plowing is very expensive to move snow too. Kind of like maintaining the ground. Now, what you'll see on the Cowboy Action Range is part of it's crushed rock, part of it's grass. All their ranges now, except the 600 and 1,000, are all covered with 0 to 3/4 crushed rock because it's preferred covering. It eats bullets. So if a bullet hits the range floor, there's much less chance of it bouncing off. It gets buried in the rock. No small feat to do that. But as operators, we take our responsibility very seriously about projectiles leaving the range. We've spent the money to do this, but it's quite the facility.
It's stunning, and the thing that excites me the most is the 1,000 meter range. But that, I bet a lot of clubs in Canada are jealous, are envious of that. And so the CFO approves the way it works. Also, is the CFO? It's called a Section 29, a Section 29 of the Firearms Act for range approvals. There's also the federal. I've got the name here. Shooting Clubs and Shooting Ranges Regulations, SOR 98-212. That's the statutory orders and regulations. That's part of the. It's kind of like a part of the Firearms Act that governs the approval of shooting ranges. There's also a federal document, I believe, called the Shooting Ranges
Range design.
Guidelines, and a provincial document that New Brunswick has, which is its own shooting range guidelines. So
Not all provinces have the provincial. We do.
So there's a lot of federal under the criminal code, federal regulations and provincial regulations, and you take them seriously. Now, were you the president when this all began? Were you already president?
Yes, I had just come in as president of the club at that point in time.
Okay. And how would you characterize your relations with the CFO? Friendly, supportive, tensions, hostile?
Oh, the current CFO was good. The one before her, who created this problem, was very difficult to deal with. Very difficult. It was only there a short period of time. He came from the military, and he said goes. So it did not work out well. It's interesting because one of the lawyers we used in the Court of Appeal had dealt with him earlier on something else. He said, no, not an easy sell. Okay, to operate within their authority.
So there's a personality beyond the authority question. There's a personality issue. So January 2019, so a few months after the inspection, the CFO approves the range and sets these 26 conditions. And I'm just going to put the slide up with the conditions there, so we know what we're talking about. Things like the range operators are responsible for enforcing all operating conditions as noted below. It is the responsibility of the range operator to ensure compliance with Section 6 of the Shooting Clubs and Shooting Ranges Regulations. Targets, I'm going to number 15 here, just jumping. Targets shall not be placed on the backstops, and the center of the target shall not be more than 1.5 meters above the range floor. What else have we got here? The number 26 at the bottom there. The use of exploding targets is not authorized at this shooting range. And there's some others that are on screen. They're also in the court. Now, some of these, I'm qualifying them as administrative, like the first one, and some of them are more operational, like the last one there, exploding targets. First question is, why not? You challenged these as an abuse of authority. What led you to challenge this as an abuse of authority in the first place? Back to the question again, why not just shut up and put up like every other club?
We were tired of it. Okay. And some of these things made the club responsible, the operator responsible for users' responsibilities. Okay. They were also giving additional authority to the CFO to inspect the facility at their discretion, which is not allowed by the regulations. There has to be specific criteria involved. So, trying to identify what target you can use on the range. You can only use this type of target, not their authority. It specifies in the range standards who's responsible for targets, and that's the operators. Okay. So we were worried about what the next hammer was that was going to drop. Okay. Nothing to stop them from turning around and saying you can only use single shot 22s. Okay. So, and if you accept everything else, then you're going to accept that. So we said, no, enough's enough. We know what our responsibilities are. We're very clear about our responsibilities. We're probably more in tune with than most rangers in the province. Okay. Across Canada, I don't know. But we We said, no, um, we know where her authority stops based on the Firearms Act, and we know where our authorities are, and we're going to fight this. We just had enough.
And what I'm hearing is a fight over principle because, for example, the point there, the last one about the exploding targets, I read in the court documents, your club already has essentially doesn't allow certain exploding targets. So
Correct.
it was not the substance of the conditions, even if you agreed with them, like, yeah, sure, okay, we don't actually have a problem with it. No, it's the principle. What I'm
Principle and the
hearing,
responsibility. Who
say
has
again.
authority? It was the principle of who has the authority to make the decision.
Right. And I guess again back to this just from so many clubs, I think every shooting range in Canada can relate to these arbitrary unilateral overreach and overstepping of authority,
Yeah,
but everybody else just caves. And
correct.
this mystery here, why this is a unique case is why not Springfield Sports Club? And I think that's why I'm drawing an attention here. I want to give a spotlight. Like I want to applaud and celebrate this victory and what led to it. It's just incredible. Can you walk us through also for other clubs? For example, did the executive have to pitch it to the board, and the board had to pitch it to the members, and the members were supportive, or could how did behind the scenes inside the club how did it happen in there?
I pitched this to my board, okay, that we do this, and we had a lot of discussions on this before we initiated it. Okay? And the board agreed. Um, Enough's enough. Okay, let's get this done. We do not go to the membership with this. The board of directors is challenged by the membership at the AGM to run the club. And that's what we do. We run the club. We meet with our membership once a year at the AGM, and that's coming up in October. You can bet there's going to be a lot of discussion about this at that AGM. So that's what we do. We run the club to the benefit of the membership. Um, our members are strong. Like I say, we've had a couple of lawyers on it. We've got a couple of accountants. We've got ex-military. We have an RCMP officer. We have a guy who teaches the restricted firearms course, retired engineers, and so on. So we understand what happens. And we also understand that if we don't do things right, we can be personally liable. And that's one of the reasons we carry a lot of insurance. Okay? But no, this was a decision done by the board. We informed the members, and we kept the members informed what was going on once the action had been taken. And we got a lot of support from our membership, our own membership. We had one member who actually contributed $2,500 directly to the club to help with the action. That was really the largest donation that came in.
That's
We had
incredible.
another couple of members who made $1,000 a piece. So yeah, were they on side? Very definitely.
That's
And we're about to try something that the CFO had banned, which was night shooting. So we're going to be testing that as the board. The board will test that at night. We've been watching YouTube videos on it, how other clubs do it, night shooting, to make sure it can all be done safely. We have a set of procedures to do it. Okay, so we're gonna make sure everything works well because we know what the downside is if it doesn't work well.
and
Right?
I'm sure you'll succeed because there are clubs all over the world who've been doing night shooting for decades and no
Exactly.
issues. So I'm sure it can be done. The How about the CFO when you initiated when the CFO comes with the conditions in January of 2019? You said it took a long time to decide to go to court. The court action was launched in November, so there's about 10, 11 months there. Are you going back and forth with the CFO and saying, look, we're going to take you to court? Like, can you just get rid of these conditions? Or was there negotiation? Or how did that work too between the club and the CFO?
Was a discussion with the current CFO, Lisa, about some of the conditions, and two of the conditions related to us leasing our range out to other people to use. When I say range, I'm saying one of the bays at a time. We've got 9 ranges, okay, on the facility. So we have a memorandum of understanding that we have with an individual, with an organization, Brinks, for instance, rents our range due qualifications. The Fredericton Police Force have been out there for training through the AR. Okay? We have leased our range to the Royal New Brunswick Rifle Association for running events. Okay, so we have the understanding. Well, they specified in the items in the conditions that we had to advise them of what was going on. And we said, no, You have no authority to ask for that. Well, we got to make sure you do it right. No. And we argued that. And they took those two conditions out. When we went to court, when they presented their documents, they put them back in, and they never even told us. Okay. So our big question was, do we rely on what we're hearing from the CFO? And we said no. So all communication stopped at that point in time. With the CFO, we dealt with the lawyers.
Because it sounds like there was a breakdown in trust. There was a breakdown in
Oh,
good faith. There was no more good
big
faith.
time, big
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
I mean, there was a breakdown in trust when we got to 26 conditions. And then poor Lisa inherited the problem. And then she looked at it, she says, yep, no, we can take those out. Read that. Whether they need it or not, not material, if they wanted it.
And I'm just going to pop in some context here. You're referring to Lisa Rossignol, who is the chief firearms officer today. At the
Today.
time of these events, it was her predecessor, Chris Hand. So,
Chris Hand, that's correct.
And I'm also just going to, this is obvious, I've got you on camera here. I don't have them, so they're not given an opportunity of rebuttal. Maybe we'll think about that in future. But today we're focusing on you.
I mean,
yeah,
they had a lot of time for rebuttal in the court.
yeah. And I've gone through the documents, and so I got to see who the he said she said back and forth. What do you think? I'm asking you to speculate about what's going through their mind, which I can do because this is not a court. But what do you think was going through their mind when they just say, we're going to invent these conditions? What would lead a CFO to do that?
I really don't know, because there was nothing in it for them. I mean, half the conditions that they put on there were bad representation of what was always in their regulations. They were saying ear and eye protection. One of them was the perimeter of your range has to be marked or cut. The regulation specify, or range design, I should say, not regulation, but the range design says it has to be marked, not cut. So they were giving you options that were not allowed according to the range design. So why they were doing that, I don't know.
How could they
in
not?
court, they said they were following Nova Scotia, but when I met with Chris originally with the conditions, he says, no, these are questions ranges were asking them.
But how could the CFO, who's in charge of applying the law, not making up the law, but applying the law, how could they not know this? How could their own range supervisor, inspection person not know the regulations? It's baffling.
Yeah, I don't know what their internal politics are. I know that Lisa gets a lot of advice from people who work around her. And there's a lot of ex-police, RCMP, some ex-military there. And I can't suppose why they were doing it. I have my own opinions, but I can't substantiate them.
And also, just to reiterate, I've spoken to people in Ontario and clubs across the
Ontario's
country.
got a problem.
And it's almost I don't want to say universal. I'm going to do like a little disclaimer here. What you're describing, where a CFO oversteps their authority to arbitrarily, unilaterally invent stuff and tries to make clubs do stuff that they don't have the authority to do, that's across Canada. Now, it depends. It's not every CFO. Some CFOs know their place and respect the law. Some CFOs are supportive. Some are hostile. So it's not a blanket thing. Some CFOs are very supportive of the shooting sports. So we're not, just to put some context on there, we're talking about a specific situation, in this case, in a specific province. However, there are some things you can generalize.
Yeah, and CFOs in Nova Scotia are abusing. Okay. I know one condition where they said the backstops all have to be covered in wood.
In wood?
Wood.
Okay.
They got to, right now in the regulation state, it's dirt or sand. Okay. So they've had ranges cover all their backstops in wood, and ranges are complaining. Now they get all shut up and all they have is a mess at the back. Okay. And it's very expensive. Now, I will back up to say not all CFOs are abusive. As we were going through court, I obtained a whole pile of range authorizations from clubs across the country. The NFA helped me with that. The clubs in Alberta seem to be in much better shape. I looked at conditions that were on their approvals, and it was things like have your new documentation ready by this date for submission. Follow the regulations. Not saying, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. Just follow the regulations. That's not a problem because we have to follow those anyway. But clubs that then, or ranges and CFOs who don't mix well, not good. I understand in Quebec, for instance, if you want to go between one bay and another, like on our facility, you have to case your firearm, walk it 3 steps to the next range, and then uncase it again. Okay. I mean, talk about a pain when you've got 30 guys out there for a shoot. Okay. But they're doing whatever they want, not following the regulations.
And they say it's public safety.
Exactly.
Do you believe it's public safety, or is this just bureaucracy?
Not at all, because according to the Firearms Act, public safety is only referenced with the CFO with the issuing of a firearms license or an ATT. They have no public safety authority on the facility. Safety on the facility, all safety including public, is the range operator's responsibility. So, I mean, first time in court with the provincial, the CFO can, well, we're doing all this for public safety. And if they said that once, they said it 10 times. Okay. But, and we say, no, there's no public safety. All right. It's not the CFO's responsibility. CFO's responsibility is make sure we have all our documentation in place, that we meet the range requirements that are documented, and that's it. If we, and the Court of Queen's Bench said, if we do that, we're approved, period.
Mm-hmm. So it's
No
like
question.
it's like a pass or fail. You pass or you fail. It's not like,
Exactly.
well,
Exactly.
we reserve the right to do this and that and come back in every no.
They have no change. I mean, they have no authority to have us change anything in our application. So that's why we got in with the 784 reference originally, because we put 24-hour day shooting 7 days a week. And they put in the condition, said, no, well, you refuse our application. Okay. If they tried to do that in the application process, we're not going to accept this because we don't like that. We'll take them to court with a 784. Okay. No question about it.
And I noticed in the conditions reading through the court documents, you opposed some of the conditions, but not all 26. Why not?
Because the ones we didn't oppose were just statements from the regulations. They may have been badly worded, and the provincial court judge stated that. Okay. They were paraphrased and paraphrased incorrectly. So when the provincial court looked at what we were reviewing, the ones we challenged, she removed them due to reasonableness. They weren't reasonable in what the CFO was doing. Abuse of authority, for instance. Okay. Or no night shooting. Not we shouldn't be responsible for what users do in the range. We can't do that. It's not a manned range. Okay. The other ones, she said, were not correct by law because they were misstating the regulations. So the question is, how competent were they when putting this thing together? Okay. But the provincial court, I believe, put down a very good decision. A lot of people Runkel looked at it and he said it was unbelievable, the detail in it. Court of Appeal didn't like her decision, said she shouldn't have heard it because the range was approved, but we argued otherwise and she accepted that. But I mean, we didn't have to challenge them all because we just said, no, they're already in the regulations. Spitting out 1 out of 6 conditions doesn't mean anything. We're already responsible for that. Okay. I mean, when I had approached Lisa about it, I said, all you need to do, if you want to put a condition in, say, abide by the Firearms Act regulations and range standards, period.
That's pretty easy.
I mean, and everything is defined. Absolutely everything is defined in those. So it's easy. You know, if you want, put down when you want our documentation for the next range certification, not a problem. Okay. That's a requirement. And that is a requirement to abide by the regulations. You don't have to document it. It's in law.
I'm just going to go to the slide. This is
Yep.
in the Court of Appeal of 1st of September 2022 last week. This is in the conclusions of the judge. Since the CFO had no authority to impose conditions on her approval of the club's application, the Court of Queen's Bench lacked jurisdiction to refer the matter back to the provincial court. So the part that interests me, is the first part of that sentence. Since the CFO had no authority to impose conditions, that's the
Pretty
crux
clear.
of it.
Yeah.
And there's some wrinkles in this case because there's a question of jurisdiction and was it going through Section 74, was it the right way, and did the court approach it correctly? That's also important, but the key point here is the substance that the CFO overstepped their authority.
Very definitely.
And
Very
there's
definitely.
no way to misunderstand that.
And
And
it's
that's,
interesting.
pardon me?
The thing that's interesting is this ruling is much stronger than what came out of the provincial court, which this one's unreasonable, this one's not correct, and so on. Could the provincial court judge have done that? Probably. Okay, because she made reference in her decision that whether there was authority from the CFO to do that. Queen's Bench wasn't experienced. Okay, it was a short hearing. The lawyer we used submitted his documentation to under instructions from us to defend the judge's decision in provincial court. And that was written up. When they stood up in court, they said something else. Okay, and therefore the Queen's Bench judge just looked and said, "Fine, you agree with the provincial that it was done under correctness?" He says, "Yes," and that's wrong. Okay, and that's why it got bounced, forced to go to Court of Appeal. Practically, I believe if we would have run one in Queen's Bench, we would have been in Court of Appeal anyway with the province. Okay, they weren't going to let this die because this is huge for.
Because it's a case of whoever loses will appeal.
Oh, very definitely, very
And
definitely.
that's why people are talking about. Runkle said this. Others have, that there is a possibility that the CFO, the province, will take this to the Supreme Court.
That's correct. There is that chance. I've had opinions from 3 different lawyers that they say they think they'll have a hard time doing that. Okay, because of what it is, and the decision from the Court of Appeal. 3 judges, 3 senior judges, signed off and said we agree with this decision. So it's not like there was any dissension at the Court of Appeal. So we'll see. We'll see if it does go to the Court of Appeal, we've got to raise some more money.
You mean if it goes to the Supreme Court of Canada?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, Court of Canada. We
And
would have to raise additional funds because we don't have enough in reserve to spend the $30,000 or $35,000.
how much have you spent on this case so far?
We're committed to $48,000.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I think a lot of clubs just shut up and put up because it's expensive.
It can be expensive. Like I say, we've got a good financial base. We have money to start this. Okay, we had money to probably do one other appeal. But we said our money belongs to the membership. Okay, and it's to maintain the facilities, to do things for the membership. So that's why we went to GoFundMe. Say we're going to need more money to follow this through. We had major support from out west, not as much in Atlantic Canada. But out west, they're a little more militant, I think, than we are down here.
And you mentioned the GoFundMe page. I'm putting up a link here. If you go to gofundme.com and at the top left, there's a search field. You search for Springfield Sports Club. You'll find the link if you want to donate to this action. And
Now, you just reference to this page, you'll see it shows us we raised a little over $42,000. That's before GoFundMe takes their cut, and we had some donations come in directly to the club, so about $48,000.
So that's good, but it might not be good enough. But it shows the magnitude. It's this is not a thing you whip together. It's a lot of money. It's a big commitment. You've been in the courts for 4 years, and this is all happening in New Brunswick. The decisions happen in New Brunswick. But I said at the beginning, I teased it by saying it's relevant to clubs across the country.
Correct.
Can you explain how that works?
In New Brunswick, the decision removes all the conditions and all authority from the CFO to do anything on range approval certification. Okay, so all their conditions are gone here. This decision becomes a reference point for other provinces. Say, okay, here's a decision, here's a precedent that's been set. Okay, and here's why. Okay, and that's well documented in the decision. But in order to get conditions removed in Nova Scotia, they've either got to talk to the CFO and say, look, we're going to do this. If you don't do this, you don't do that. Or they're going to have to challenge the CFO in a court case. Okay. And depending on how they get in, they either do it through a Section 74 or the rules of court, I think it's 62, which is a judicial review, which is more expensive to do. Okay. It takes much greater prep than a 74 reference hearing. But clubs don't have the money. Personally,
Right.
I try and get my clubs together in the province and build a war chest and say, we're going to fix this problem. They need money. Clubs don't maintain enough cash to run their facilities. They just don't. They don't charge enough for their memberships.
And I'm just going to go on a rant here. A couple of years ago, I was aware of this problem between the CFOs and clubs, and I had very informal conversations with a couple club range owners about creating some sort of provincial or national association so that people could share information and share funds and hire lawyers. And there was no interest. The clubs I spoke to, I'm
I
not
know.
saying it's every,
I
they're
know.
just we'll just quietly shut up and comply and do what they tell us, and it'll
Clubs in New Brunswick,
hope they'll go
yeah,
away.
most of the clubs in New Brunswick do. They stick their head in the sand. Okay, they don't want to raise awareness. Think they're going to be targeted.
Yeah, and they will
Do I
be.
think we're going to get a tougher inspection next time? Definitely, but I'm not worried about it because we maintain our facility.
Yeah.
They try and do something with stuff that's not covered, we will challenge them immediately. Okay, so they know. Yeah, they know.
And that's also something very interesting that I find in terms of the mentality. Nobody has more at stake than having a proper range that runs properly with no issues than the executive, than the members, because they know the slightest mess up, you're shut down. So
Correct.
the clubs I'm aware of go absolutely above and beyond. They're and they don't need the hammer to come down on them because they put their own hammers down harder than anybody ever will.
Yeah, I mean, last year we dismissed 2 members for safety and attitude violations.
Good.
He said, no, we don't put up with this at all. We catch them, they're toast.
Yeah.
And then you report them to the CFO. Why you dismiss close the membership? It's up to the CFO if they want to act on anything else. Yeah.
Right. And part of my hope here is also to encourage and inspire club executives, club members to show them that they can say no. They have the option of going to court, or they have the option of at least challenging the CFO's abuses of authority. Now, we're not talking about everything the CFO says. You got to challenge it.
Oh no,
No,
oh no.
challenge the CFO's abuses of authority. They're arbitrary, unilateral, the stuff they make up that they're not allowed to make up.
Uh-huh.
If for the club members, the executives, the presidents watching you, what message do you have for them?
My message would be understand the Firearms Act as it relates to you, the club regulations, and your range design. Know who's responsible for what, and make sure you maintain your responsibilities 100% or better. Okay. Example, at Springfield, we have targets placed at 10, 25, 50, and 100 going down range on our 100-meter ranges. According to the CFO, no, your targets have to be the backstop. Federal regulations say that. Provincials do not. Targets we move forward. But as a club, we went and built small piles that are a meter high behind each of the target stands to catch bullets before they hit the range floor. So, no question, range floor is properly designed with crushed rock, but we put in the added security, the small berm. Can't call them bullet catchers, can't call them ground berms because they're predefined, but the small bullet berm just in behind each of the stands. So know what your responsibility is, go over and above if you can. Like putting all the crushed rock on the floor. It's expensive. I mean, you're looking at about $6,000 a range. But again, we have the money and we manage it to give us the ability to do that.
And is that level is that level of knowledge of information available to a club executive? Because I know when I read the legislation, the regulations, it's hard to understand. It's like, do you need to hire a lawyer?
No, you don't. You have to take an interest in doing it.
Okay.
I took a great interest in doing this. I was on the club. I've been on the club executive since 2007. I was the treasurer and membership chair up until 2018 when I came in as president. Finally got another accountant on the board. He took over as treasurer. But I took an interest in understanding. As a board officer, there is personal liabilities involved if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Okay. So, I mean, I've sat on many boards of different organizations. I'm on my Rotary Club board. And I know there's personal liabilities involved. Most people don't understand. They say, well, I'm just a volunteer. No, no, no. More goes with it than that. So if you're not willing to take the pain, don't look for any gain. And so that's important. It's important to understand. I have my Bible that I take everywhere.
What's that?
That's documentation for the range.
Mm-hmm.
It's a copy of the Firearms Act, a copy of the regulations, and a copy of my range design, and all the forms that we use. Okay, so I have a question, I go to my Bible. So I'm very aware of that.
What can members do if hypothetically I'm a member of a club and I'm aware that the CFO is putting on these conditions that they don't have the authority to put, but my executive is just not doing anything about it. What, as a member, what can the member do when they have an executive that is not?
Got to bring the question to the executive. Remember, the executive runs the club at the discretion of the membership, who get a chance to vote them in or out. That's really a membership thing. If you don't like what the executives are doing, you vote them out. Okay. Our executive is 8 people. When you sign on, you're there for 3 years, and our terms all stagger. So we're never going to replace the whole board at one time. I mean, members, according to our bylaws, you can have a special meeting called with so many agreeing, and challenge your board to do what they're supposed to do. That's why they're there. Okay, you run the facility on behalf of the organization, but the members are the organization. So, no irresponsibility. That's the biggest thing. Take an interest. Yeah.
What was it like over the past 4 years going through the court system?
You should ask my wife. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours working on this over the last 4 years, with lawyers, with my board, okay, answering questions, okay, communicating with different people. It's been a toll. Okay, I'll be glad to see it over. Okay, we can get back on with business. This year, our club has spent virtually no money on our facility. There's things we want to do, but we've got to make sure we keep a pile of cash in reserve, okay, just in case. We've got to be able to go to the Supreme Court of Canada if we have to, and if there's no more money coming in to go funding. Okay, we have to be able to do that. Our members will suffer for it, but it's on the long-term benefit of the facility and of the membership.
Do you think your members, seeing the result and seeing how much it's costing, would they be supportive of a Supreme Court?
I think they would.
Okay.
I think they would. There's a lot of very smart people out there with firearms. Okay, and we'll hold our AGM in October, the third Monday in October, same as always. I'm expecting a huge turnout this year, and for huge, I'm thinking if we get 75 people, that's big. Remember, we've got 385 people at members, but whole pile of them just sit back and look at the communications.
Right.
But we have a few that get involved, very definitely. Yep. Looking forward to the meeting in October anyway, because big smiles on our faces now.
Where are you in your term? Are you up for re-election or are you staying on?
I'm sorry?
Where are you in your term? Are you up for re-election or are you staying on?
Next year, I'm up for
Next year,
election.
okay.
Even though people like to get involved, they don't want to be at the head table.
Right.
So it's very hard to solicit people to run for a board in a not for organization. Very difficult.
As you've just said, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of responsibility, and depending on how things go, you could end up in court with your name in court documents and
very definitely. Very definitely.
And everything, unfortunately, everything to do with firearms is under the criminal code. So these are very serious penalties. And this is an area I don't know about. As the range operator, are you criminally liable if you fail to respect the regulations?
That I don't know.
Okay.
If we're criminally liable, we would be liable if we don't respect the regulations, we can lose the facility.
Right.
Okay. That if somebody gets hurt with us not doing it, we'd be open to lawsuit from the individual. Now, the individual would sue the club, and we carry board insurance to offset that, but still not a good feeling.
Right.
Okay. So I know as a director of this organization, we take everything we can do to make sure nothing happens on the facility. I mean, Springfield has a whole lot of steel targets on their range. All the steel is made out of AR 500, so it doesn't dimple. It's all either hanging free flowing, so it moves, or it's all hanging on an angle, so everything reflects down. There's no flat steel. Okay? And we made that decision. And do you get splashback sometimes if you're close? Yeah, it can happen. That's why we're saying if you're shooting steel, you make sure you've got long pants on, long sleeve shirt, and everybody wears glasses and earring protection on the range. So it's not an issue because you never get a bullet coming back. You get a small fragment, and that's dangerous shooting steel. People are aware of it.
And now it's coming back to the decision. Well, today is September 9th. The decision was on September 1st, so just over a week. What kind of response have you had since the verdict?
I've had a few emails from people who say, "I can't believe this has happened." It's on our Facebook page, and we've got comments there. I had comments from out west. So, glad you did this. We're going to put more money into the donations. I heard from Nova Scotia. A couple of clubs in Nova Scotia are really upset with their CFO. They want to know how we did this. I would have no problem at all. They wanted to invite me to a meeting, get a pile of clubs together, sit and talk like we are today. Okay, I think it's good information. I think it's important that they understand what's going on and what they'd be up against.
And do you think it would be useful to have some sort of Canadian Association of Shooting Ranges? Would that be okay?
Most definitely. Most definitely.
So if anyone's watching this and is motivated to do something like that, now the time is ripe.
But I know most clubs, and New Brunswick is examples. They operate within a little cocoon each, and they're afraid to go outside of it.
Why is that?
Don't know. I mean, I see that with businesses that we deal with. Well, we're different. Business is business. Okay. Well, yeah, but that stuff doesn't work. We've got to change it. Take a look at what you're doing. You don't operate individually. You operate as a group. Okay. And if you're operating individually, that's why the CFO has so much impact, because you're afraid of them. Just another employee with a set of rules and regulations. I mean, he's a creature of statute. What he's allowed to do or she's allowed to do is defined in law. That's their job description. They're not allowed to operate outside of it. I know of a member of a club in St. John, New Brunswick, who challenged the CFO a number of years ago on a winning case. And they won based on that. And the CFO was trying to do something with an ATT. He said, "No, you're not allowed to do that." He took him to court. The guy was a police officer, and he stood up to the CFO. So that's a pretty good win there. This one's going to go down the record.
I'm so excited. Again, I just can't say how excited I am. What has been the response of the main gun owner organizations, NFA, CSSA, CCFR, so forth?
Caliber put a note on their website. NFA, I approached. So yeah, we'll get somebody to get back to you. Never heard from them. Okay. CSSA, never heard. I mean, I sent out communications to all these people. I mean, they see it. No response. Again, they seem to be operating with their own cocoon. It's too bad because, I mean, there's an awful lot going on with firearms right now. And if we're not very careful as firearms owners, we're going to be using knives. Okay. And I mean, in Saskatchewan, they found out, so we're waiting for black-handled knives to be restricted. So it's crazy.
I don't know if you're joking or semi-joking or
semi-joking.
Semi-joking, yeah. Okay, so I haven't followed that. Okay,
but it's just you never know.
You never know.
Trudeau's going after the guns.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been going after them since 1990, and firearms owners are not the problem. Right. That's how they buy votes.
And so there's part of and again, I'm just going to put on that first slide. This court victory on September 1st of 2022 in New Brunswick shows that shooting ranges can fight CFO abuses of authority and win. Yeah. And I'm just really excited and congratulations. And I hope this serves as an inspiration for people across the country.
Thank you very much. And they can reach me through our club website, or Gmail address. If they have questions, I'm more than willing to answer any questions they've got. If they want to talk, we can talk. No problem at all. I'd love to help other people.
Okay, well, that's very generous, and thank you again for walking me through this and sharing it with the readers and viewers of TheGunBlog.ca. Wishing you, whatever happens, however this turns out, wishing you and your club incredible success ahead.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and it was great doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.